AZ Food saying she needs to remember to shoot the ball more and she needs to stop being hesitant shooting the ball. This is a player who is drafted because she does one thing, and she basically just came out and was like, I need to stop being scared to shoot the ball.
6'4", smooth shooting stroke, second round pick, and the Indiana Fever might be about to let her walk away for nothing. We're talking about Justine Pissott, and if you haven't been paying attention to training camp, you need to understand what's happening here, because this isn't just a roster decision. This is the kind of mistake that haunts franchises for years.
Raven Johnson is about 5'8". A lot of Fever players are smaller. I think Caitlin's probably maybe a little bit shorter than 6 foot. And like even Sophie and Lexi. Lexi's clearly way taller than Sophie. They're listed at the same height. So you see in the WNBA, a lot of these players are being listed at incorrect heights. Like Cam Brink says she's 6'4". She's minimum 6'6". Awa Pham is minimum 6'5" without shoes on. Like she towered over Angel Reese.
Let's establish the baseline first. Height in the WNBA gets listed incorrectly all the time. Caitlin Clark is listed at 6'1", but she's probably shorter. Nalissa Smith and Aliyah Boston are listed at the same height, but Lexi Hull clearly towers over Sophie Cunningham despite identical measurements on paper. Cam Brink is listed at 6'4", but she's minimum 6'5" without shoes. This matters because when you see Justine Pissott standing next to the Fever roster, she's legitimately 6'4", not 6'1" pretending to be 6'4", actually 6'4". And in a league where size and shooting ability rarely exist in the same package, that combination doesn't grow on trees.
Like she's the tallest player on this Fever team. Maybe Mo Billings? But like she's tall, she's bigger size-wise than I thought. She's longer than I thought. And the jump shot is so smooth. The jumper is just so smooth, just in general. Like, I'm sorry. If you just look at her in the corner catching the ball, it's so smooth. Like, that jump shot is like the smoothest jump shot on a big in the WNBA by a mile. And yes, I understand.
Here's what makes this situation so frustrating. The jump shot isn't just good, it's elite. We're talking about the smoothest shooting stroke on a big in the entire WNBA. Watch her catch in the corner during these training camp drills. The release is quick, the form is textbook, the confidence is there. This is a 6'4" player who can legitimately space the floor. And yes, the defense needs work. Nobody's pretending she's a two-way player right now. But you know what? Katie Lou Samuelson isn't a defensive stopper either. And she's been a valuable rotation player for years because of what she provides on offense.
As a player is a hypothetical. But I don't care. If you are the Indiana Fever, okay, cool. Make her developmental slot player. But you don't lose her. Whatever you do not lose her. You cut somebody. It doesn't matter who it is, you cut somebody. You cut whichever one of the 5'9" guards starts the season the worst. You cut one of them. You cannot. Like, I don't think people understand. 6 foot.
Think about what the Fever are actually looking at here. Best case scenario, Josai develops into a B. Allen type player. Worst case, even if she remains a defensive liability, she's still Katie Lou Samuelson, a 6'4" shooter who can come off the bench and give you quality minutes when you need floor spacing. And you're getting that player on a 4-year minimum contract. That's not just good value. That's the kind of find that can change your second unit completely. But instead of securing that asset, Indiana might be about to put her on a developmental contract and watch another team claim her.
Defensive end, what? She's Beck Allen? She's Katie Lou Samuelson? Even if she's a bad defender. As in, like, if she's just bad and not like so bad you can't put her out on the floor. If she's just a bad defender, she's Katie Lou Samuelson. And I'm sorry, getting Katie Lou on a 4-year minimum, a young Katie Lou to progress on a 4-year minimum is great. And that's the problem and the reality is that they signed so many 5'9" guys. This wouldn't be as much of a question, by the way, if they had drafted Gianna Neepkins in the first round. Because, yeah, they have a lot of 5'9" guards, but they also have 3.
Now let's talk about why this is happening. The Fever signed 5 guards who are all 5'9", 5 of them. And look, there's nothing wrong with any of these players individually. But when you construct a roster, you have to think about positional balance. You have to think about what you actually need. Indiana needs wing depth. They need size at the 4 position. They don't need a 5th 5'9" guard who's going to spend most of the season on the practice squad. But that's exactly what they've created. A logjam at one position and a shortage at another.
But this is a team that needs wing depth. They need 4 depth. And they have 5'9" guards. Like, it's as simple as that. And then Caitlin can't really not play the 1. Like, you're going to be seeing Caitlin power forward reps this year. But, like, They really put the 6'4" demon shooter on the practice squad for half a dozen 5'9" guards. I mean, you're not wrong. This training camp, it's been Pissott hitting that beautiful throw on threes, and you put a developmental player. And like, look, I don't actually have an issue with the developmental player. The problem is that I don't see them cutting anyone.
Here's where it gets even more problematic. This wouldn't be such a glaring issue if they had drafted Janiah Barker in the first round, because then you'd have 3 6-foot wings to balance out those 5'9" guards. You'd have positional flexibility. You'd have size across multiple spots. But they didn't make that pick. So now you're looking at a roster that's guard-heavy, undersized at the wing positions, and potentially about to cut a 6'4" shooter because there's no room. The construction just doesn't make sense when you step back and look at it holistically.
Like, we don't know. We're not there in practices. The likelihood is that she's going to be a developmental player and signed by somebody else and gone. That is an above 50% chance, and that just can't happen. Like, she is, I'm not saying she's a unicorn, because there are 6'4" shooters out there. Like, to act like Leo Phoebish is a unicorn because she's the best defender in the WNBA on top of being a 6'4" shooter. Like, Phoebish is more of a unicorn than Satu. Katie Lou Samuelson is.
And before anyone says this is premature, that we don't know what's happening in practice, that's fair. We're not in the gym watching these sessions. But here's what we do know. Justine Pissott was a top 10 recruit coming out of high school. Her scouting models projected her to be a quality pro. She chose Tennessee during a period when that program was, let's be honest, a complete disaster. Everything Tennessee touched during that era fell apart. So you're not evaluating a player who failed to develop. You're evaluating someone who never got the opportunity to show what she could do in a functional system.
These like Moneyball teams, you've seen her size and you've seen the stroke. Like, whatever about their scouting, I would say most people's scouting, a lot of people's like scouting models thought that she was going to be pretty good. And she's somebody that does project to be a top pro. And she was a top 10 recruit in high school. She just chose to go to Tennessee during a time when Tennessee were, for lack of a better way of describing it, a complete shit show. Everything that Tennessee touches has just been a shit show. So like,
let's compare this to another situation. The Fever gave KK Arnold those 12th roster spot minutes last season. And what did we learn? We saw some good moments and a lot of bad ones. That's fine. That's what developmental minutes are supposed to reveal. But here's the problem. KK went overseas for a season and came back without showing significant progression. At some point you have to ask whether those reps are better spent on a different player. Someone like Josai, who brings a skill set that's actually rare in this league. A 6'4" frame with legitimate three-point range and a quick trigger.
But you just can't. Like, we've gotten 18 months of watching. Not 18 months. We've gotten a year of watching Michaela Timpson play. And I think there's enough. There's been, for every one good thing, there's been 8 bad things. I think we've seen enough to know that, like, okay, yeah, KK's raw. I'm probably not going to reach the potential. Probably not. Very, very raw. And like,
there's another factor people aren't discussing enough. Other teams have seen Josai's size in person now. They've watched the training camp footage. They've seen the shooting stroke. If you're running a Moneyball front office, if you're one of these analytically driven teams, you're absolutely monitoring this situation. Because if Indiana puts her on a developmental contract, she becomes available. And someone is going to claim her. This isn't speculation. This is how smart organizations operate. They watch for exactly these kinds of roster construction mistakes, and they capitalize on them.
She's legitimately 6'4", and she's somebody that I do feel like the Fever long-term could be a great piece, because there are not that many 6'4" shooters around, especially ones that have as quick a trigger and are as and are legitimately 6'4". Not 6'1" and saying they're 6'4", that are legitimately 6'4". She moves solidly. There's a reason why she was on Team USA's growing up. Like, this could be the steal of the damn draft, and the Fever might be letting it walk.
Here's the reality about 6'4" shooters in the WNBA. Beck Allen is considered somewhat of a unicorn. Not just because she's 6'4" and can shoot, but because she's also an elite defender. That's the complete package. Josai isn't there defensively, but the offensive foundation is absolutely present. The size is real. The stroke is smooth. The basketball IQ exists. This is someone who played for Team USA in youth competitions. The pedigree is there. The tools are there. What she needs is time in a functional system with quality coaching. And instead, she might get cut because the Fever prioritize quantity over positional need.
For her own sake, I hope she cooks in preseason, because worst case scenario, like, it means that she's playing the WNBA regardless if somebody else wants to. So anyway, yeah, that is the video. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry about the background noise. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
So what should Indiana do? It's actually pretty simple. You make Showtime your developmental player if you want. That's fine. But you don't lose her. You cut somebody else. You look at those 5'9" guards and you make a hard decision about who's actually going to contribute this season. You prioritize the player with the rare skill set over the player who's redundant with 4 other roster spots. Because here's the thing about the WNBA. You can find 5'9" guards. They're not common, but they exist. 6'4" shooters? Those don't grow on trees. You don't let that walk away because you couldn't make a tough roster decision. Let's put this in perspective with some recent WNBA history. Remember when teams passed on players because they didn't fit an immediate need, only to watch those players thrive elsewhere? That's exactly what's at risk here. The Fever are in a unique position right now. They have Caitlin Clark, which means they have attention, they have leverage, and they have time to develop players properly. But that window won't last forever if they keep making short-sighted roster decisions. Think about what Indiana actually needs moving forward. Caitlin is going to play heavy minutes at the 1. That's not changing. So why do you need 5 guards at the same position when you could have depth at the 4? Why are you prioritizing redundancy over versatility? The modern WNBA is about positionless basketball, about having players who can switch defensively and space the floor offensively. Justine fits that model. A 5'9" guard who can't shoot fits the 1990s model. And here's what makes this especially frustrating for Fever fans. This isn't about one player. It's about a pattern of roster construction that prioritizes the familiar over the strategic. It's about making decisions based on what's comfortable rather than what's optimal. You see it in the draft choices. You see it in the free agent signings. You see it in who gets training camp invitations. There's a lack of coherent vision about what this roster is supposed to be. Now, some people will argue that Josiah's defensive limitations are too significant to overlook, that in a league where defense wins championships, you can't afford to have a liability on the floor. And look, that's a valid concern, but it's also short-sighted. Defense can be taught. Defensive awareness can be developed. You know what can't be taught? Being 6'4". You can't coach height. You can't develop wingspan. Those are fixed attributes that either exist or they don't. Compare that to shooting ability, which actually can regress. We've seen plenty of college shooters struggle to translate their range to the WNBA three-point line. We've seen players lose their confidence and their mechanics. Josiah's stroke looks the same at the pro level as it did in college. That's actually rare. That suggests the skill is legitimate and repeatable. So you're looking at a player with the one thing you can't teach, combined with a skill that's already proven to translate. Why would you give up on that combination after one training camp? Let's talk about the financial aspect too, because this matters. WNBA roster spots are valuable, but they're not expensive compared to other leagues. A developmental contract costs basically nothing. A minimum rookie deal is roughly $100,000. For that price, you're getting a lottery ticket on a 6'4" shooter who might develop into a rotation player. Even if there's only a 30% chance she works out, that's incredible value. You're not talking about a max contract here. You're talking about the cheapest possible investment in a high-upside player, and if she doesn't work out, you cut her next year and you've lost basically nothing except a roster spot that was going to a practice squad player anyway. But if she does develop, if she becomes even a serviceable backup 4 who can space the floor, that's a player making the league minimum who provides starter-level value in a specific role. That's how you build depth. That's how you create a roster that can survive injuries and matchup problems. Here's another angle that's not getting enough attention. Caitlin Clark is going to get doubled. She's going to see box-and-1 defenses. She's going to face schemes specifically designed to limit her impact. When that happens, you need players who can punish those defensive strategies. You need shooters who can make teams pay for overcommitting to Caitlin. A 6'4" shooter stationed in the corner while defenses collapse on Clark? That's exactly the kind of player you want. That's not just good roster construction. That's specifically tailored to maximize your best player's impact. But instead, if the Fever cut Josiah, they're saying they'd rather have another ball handler who needs the ball in their hands to be effective. They're saying they'd rather have redundancy than complementary skills. And that's how you waste a generational talent's prime years. That's how you look back in 3 years and wonder why you never built the right supporting cast around your franchise player. The preseason games are going to be crucial here. Josiah needs to show out. She needs to cook in these exhibitions, not just for her own sake, but to force Indiana's hand. Because if she goes out there and hits 5 threes in a preseason game, if she shows that the shooting translates against WNBA competition, it becomes much harder to justify cutting her. It becomes a story. It becomes something the media asks about in press conferences. And sometimes that external pressure is what forces organizations to make the right decision. So here's what we're watching for. Does Josiah get real minutes in preseason, or does she spend most of the games on the bench? When she does play, Is she getting actual offensive opportunities, or is she just standing in the corner being ignored? And most importantly, how does the coaching staff talk about her in media availability? Because that's going to tell us everything about whether they value what she brings, or whether they've already made up their minds. The bottom line is this: 6'4" shooters are rare. Players with Josiah's combination of size and skill don't come around often. And when you find one in the second round, you don't let them walk away because you signed too many redundant guards. You make the hard decision. You cut the player who's easily replaceable, and you keep the one who isn't. Because in 2 years, when Josiah is hitting threes for another team and the Fever are scrambling to find wing depth, this decision is going to look really bad. And it didn't have to be this way. It's a choice. And right now, Indiana is choosing wrong. So what do you think? Should the Fever cut one of those 5'9" guards to keep Josiah? Or is the defensive liability too much to overlook? Drop your take in the comments and make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to be covering every roster move as training camp continues. This is just the beginning of what's going to be a fascinating few weeks before the season starts.